Hello and welcome to Smaulgld. In case you missed it, top gold and silver stories for the week ended October 1st. GoldMoney, sharp Pixley join crypto craze. GoldMoney is going to sell and store cryptos as part of its service offerings, and Sharps Pixley is going to accept Bitcoin for its bullion sales. That's one story we're going to talk about. We're also going to talk about U.S. ramping up pressure on Venezuela. We're going to talk about IMF Chief Christine Lagarde's positive comments about cryptocurrencies and also a warning she put out to her fellow globalists. Well, that unsourced gold-backed yuan story continues to make the rounds. Just about any news outlet that covers gold has mentioned that story, has amplified that story, has done calculations on what the price of gold needs to be in order for it to work. And we're going to talk about that unsourced story later in the program as well. Japan issues cryptocurrency exchange licenses. Bitcoin is fully legal in Japan and now just about to be fully regulated. Now let's get into the week's stories. So let's first look at gold and silver. Gold closed last week at just under 1300. It looks like it has given up its gains. It had closed above 1300 2 weeks ago and well above that. So now for the last almost month, price of gold is then declining. It declined 1.4% and we're at 1279. Silver last week before, closed at under 17 and it fell another 2% this past week to 1663. Now the gold silver ratio ended the week at close to 77 to 1. Now, one of the things I want to show people, I don't know where this started, but there has been this, I'd say it's a meme or a myth or just plain silver salesmanship. I've been going on and on about how the gold silver ratio is unsustainable. It's a natural ratio of 16 to 1. You even get guys like Maloney telling you it's going to go to 1 to 1. All right, let me show you a long-term chart. For 50 years, the gold silver ratio hasn't even been ever 16 to 1. Ever. 50 years. So if it's unsustainable, you want to wait 50 years for it to go back down? I don't see why it would happen. Look at this chart. I start with 1975 because Americans weren't allowed to own gold up until the very end of 1974. So you can't count anything before that. Not that before that the gold silver ratio was 16. The only time the gold silver ratio was ever 16 to 1 was when they set it at 16 to 1 for bimetallic standard purposes. It wasn't because the free market decided that gold should be only 16 times the price. No, that's what the governments decided it need to be in order to have a bimetallic standard. Now there was a period of time during the gold rush that the gold price went down and silver became valuable just because, when you have all that gold coming from San Francisco back east, gold is footing the market. But that's a short-term disequilibrium because you also had the same thing when a lot of silver came back to Spain from the New World in the 1500s. That made Spain hyperinflate because then you had all that quote money printing coming into the country from Latin America, and that made silver cheap. But for the last 100 or so years, things are pretty much solid that there's a ratio of gold silver and it's set by the market. Now you can see the markets are manipulated. I'm not going to disagree, but the fact is you can manipulate silver a lot easier so you can keep the price lower because it requires less money. So that could have something to do with it. But look at this chart here. If past this prologue, you're not going to get a much lower gold silver ratio. Even when we had our mega spike in 2011 of silver going up to, which lasted a couple of weeks, up to $50, you only got to 31, 32 to 1, the ratio. And in 1980, when you had the Hunts brothers trying to buy every last piece of silver on the planet, it still didn't get to 16 to 1. I think it got to about 20 to 1. So this chart should be sobering. It should tell you that the gold silver ratio is, absent the two spikes, it's kind of locked at least above 50. I mean, if you just take a line and draw it across there, you get it 50-55. You can make arguments that maybe it's a touch too high, but look, it's been almost 100 to 1. So the idea that you're going to get rich by silver going up at a much faster pace than gold, it will go up faster than gold. Yes, when they both go up. But the idea that it's going to outpace gold 4 and 5 to 1 in gains, I don't know why that would happen now. It could happen if there's some kind of real shortage, but we haven't seen that. So I just want to quickly leave this topic. But gold and silver are not the same metals. The main reason that people say that the ratio is unsustainable is because of the relative rarities. But relative rarity is not the only determinant in price. I mention this all the time. These are two different metals. They have different properties, different purchasers, different uses. So there's a reason it isn't just as simple as 16 to 1 or even 1 to 1. It doesn't matter what the relative rarity is. And I mentioned this one is very easy to understand. They mine 10, 15 times more gold every year than platinum. Platinum is cheaper than gold. There's a reason for it. The other one I give is relative rarity, and this one should be very obvious. I've made maybe 2 or 3 paintings in my life. They're no good. Picasso has made thousands of paintings. Relative rarity, I win. My paintings are worthless. His are worth millions. All right, let's continue going on the stories of the week. There's your quest, or it's my quest for donations, your request to make them. You can make them via PayPal. Bitcoin, Litecoin, I do appreciate them. They are few and far between, but at least psychologically they keep me going. They don't keep me going economically. But there you go. You can also become a patron. You can donate a small or large amount monthly at the link there. Everything is below the YouTube. Everything is below, whether you're watching on BitChute or VidMe. And also on the Smaulgld website, you've got your greatest opportunities to visit the sponsors and to donate to Smaulgld. Now, the sponsors are the gold and silver companies. Let's just take a quick moment to talk about them. I know there's a big debate between crypto fans and gold and silver fans. We call them bugs. When I say bugs, that's not derogatory. You could be a silver bug, a gold bug, a Bitcoin bug, or Bitcoin, or whatever you are, crypto bug. But I do see this impassioned defense against cryptos by gold bugs and silver bugs. But I don't see any buying. I don't see any buying. And the U.S. Mint numbers were going to come out again. I'll cover them all next week. I'll cover the Perth Mint, the U.S. Mint, the Canadian Mint. The sales are atrocious. They're way, way down. So for all the people that are considering or trashing cryptos while they're going up, well, as Chris Dwayne says, if the prices are down and you believe in gold and silver, I don't see why people aren't buying them. They're not. They're not buying them from my site. They're not buying them from the U.S. Mint. I can count on one hand the gold and silver sales that have gone through the Smaulgld site in the last 2.5, 3 months. And before that, I used to get more than a handful of sales each week. And they have died down. Now, what has become a popular offer on the Smaulgld site, which I guess is part of the zeitgeist, is the offer to sign up for Coinbase. I signed up dozens of people on Coinbase, and the Coinbase offer is basically you buy $100 worth of Bitcoin on Coinbase, you get $10 of that for free, and then Smaulgld gets $10 of that. That's had far more interest than the gold purchases, silver purchases. And this is a silver and gold site primarily. I cover the cryptos because I would think they are a related area. And also I cover economics, so everything is all together. But as I mentioned up at the top in the headline, GoldMoney is now selling and storing cryptos, and Pixley accepting Bitcoin. So they're clearly a related product. You can argue whether they're the same, they're different. That's not the point. The point I'm making is that there is a clear movement of money, just evident on my site, which is a gold and silver site primarily, to cryptos, people signing up for that offer. The offer is below the BitChute. It's below. It's everywhere. You can find it. And the offers are more prominent to buy gold and silver. And I don't want to say no one is doing it, but I would say sales are down 90%. Now remember, when I sell through those links, Smaulgld makes a small commission, but not making anything because no one's buying them, but they are signing up for Coinbase. So take that for what it's worth. I think that the comments are, I would say, 80-20 in favor of gold when people are taking a side. They're in favor of gold and silver. But I have to say that the money being spent is 90-10 in favor of the cryptos. Just thought you'd appreciate hearing that. The amounts I make are they're small, so they're not material, but they do indicate, I think, the macro sense of what's going on, because my low gold and silver sales match pretty neatly with the 86% decline in US Mint sales as well. I mean, it's basically, they track what my sales are telling me. And then these big crypto rises, you can see the number of people, so here's the Coinbase signing up on Coinbase. They now have 10.6 million accounts, and they had 9.5 million accounts just a month and a half ago. So the site is kind of a microcosm, Smaulgld, of what's going on. All right, there's your gold silver ratio. And now let's get some of the stories of the week. I've changed the format. I've been doing it slowly over time. I tweet during the week. I find stories, I tweet them, I make comments on them, and I've been including a lot of those tweets in the weekly, in case you missed it, podcast. But now what I've realized is it's a lot easier just to document the tweets during the week and then go through them rather than try to match them to a story, because the tweet itself contains the story. But one thing, now let's talk about this. One of the things we mentioned at the top is this gold backed yuan story. This is so skewed towards not taking into account anything about China. It's just meant to get gold bugs hyped up that somehow gold is part of the monetary system again, or it's like Bretton Woods, and people just accept that they saw it once. Oh no, they saw it in 3 places. They saw it everywhere. If you see the story everywhere, a fake story placed on every website doesn't make it more true. It just means you're repeating the same story. And the reason I repeat that is I want people to get excited about gold. Well, I'll tell you what, the gold price hasn't reacted. The gold price has gone down since September 1st when that story first came out. So good, if you think that producing those stories is going to help the gold price go up, it's not, because gold traders ignored that story. The price of gold was $13.50 when that story came out. Is now $12. So good luck. That didn't do you any good. If you think it's going to increase sales, did it? I don't think so. So anyone who's a precious metal dealer who's putting out that story thinking they're going to increase sales, hasn't happened. And it's not true. I mean, if it is true, there's no source for it. We're going to go through even more evidence of why that story is complete BS. But one of the things that people should be talking about, but it's the exact opposite, is, and this is a tweet I put out early in the week, and I also had a interview Josh Wiley, which makes the same point, is a collapse in Chinese debt-based Ponzi scheme has the potential to make gold soar far more than this fake news of a gold-backed yuan. What do I mean by that? Well, gold bugs are constantly talking about AIB and de-dollarization, and China's going to crash the dollar and stand for delivery on COMEX. They're not going to do any of those things. China has its own issues that the gold community completely ignores. And we'll see some of these ghost cities, 300% debt to GDP, the crackdown on Bitcoin. What's that about? All the debt that they own and all the wealth that they've created, they don't want that to leave the country. Because if they're paying people to build cities and to engage in economic activity that would make Henry Hazlitt blush, digging holes and then filling them back up, or building skyscrapers for no one to live in, they don't want that money then to leave. People pocket the money that they make in making fake construction. They don't want that money to go into Bitcoin and leave the country so they can go buy something somewhere else. They want to run the Ponzi scheme. They want to keep that money in China. But the gold bug story is not about the gold price rising, because if you want to talk about a collapse, if China collapses, well, your gold's going to be worth a lot more then. If you make up some stupid story about China's accepting gold for, or is going to pay for its oil in gold through the Shanghai Gold Exchange, which doesn't allow exports. So let's continue on with some of the other stories. So here's one of them, or from our friends at Shock the World, King World News. Dire warning. You got Hugo Salinas Price. Now he's calculated that you need a $13,000 price in gold for all this to work. Okay, so you start with a story that isn't true in the first place, and then you start doing calculations on it. And now the gold bugs are even more excited. Oh, Jim Rickard said 10,000. This guy said 50,000. Well, Hugo nailed it. It's 13,000. And of course, now instead of using shock the world, they probably heard that I was mocking that. They now say affect the whole world or rock the global markets. Yeah, game changer, dire warning, alert, alert. And people believe this stuff. Yeah. You know who believes it? Just the people that believe this stuff. The gold bugs that just follow this stuff religiously and sit around saying, wait, you'll see, you won't see anything. This story will be forgotten in 3 or 4 months when it was supposed to have happened by the end of the year. Yeah, what's going to happen is they're going to denominate a oil futures contract in yuan. That's it. There's no exchangeability into gold. There's no gold backing. And even some of the people who were cited in this story are now saying, yes, well, that's the big deal. The big deal is the yuan denomination. All right, then let's talk about that. Somewhat of a big deal. What you price stuff in is important. Backing with gold, though, that's the story. That's supposedly what's got everyone's excited. But you can see, hasn't gotten the gold market excited. The traders they've sold gold since that story came out. I don't see anyone buying. I don't see the numbers increasing in the retail sales of gold. Yeah, coming soon. So here's the thing. When the yuan denominated contract finally gets launched, they're going to say they were right. No, there is going to be yuan denominated oil futures contract. That doesn't mean they're right. It means they're right on part of the story, but that's not the part of the story that was touted. There's not going to be a gold component to it. Now, here's the other thing about that $13,000 number. See, they're very clever. So Hugo comes up with the price has got to be $13,000. What they're going to say is when it finally doesn't happen and they only have a yuan denominated oils futures contract that isn't backed by gold, they're going to say, well, they couldn't agree on the price. They couldn't get to 13,000. They'll make up some nonsense about why it didn't happen. If anyone's even paying attention by then, because probably there'll be another nonsense story out in December or January about silverback this, or someone will have some story. I don't have the imagination for these makeup stories, but there'll be another story. Remember, sovereign size gold buy is going to rock the global markets, shock the world. There was some token that was going to come out, and I don't know whatever happened to it. Okay. Rory Hall, he had received, independent of my sending him my opinion that the gold-backed yuan story was nonsense, Coach Jansen also had, or he noticed something that he had said too, and Coach and I were both in agreement without having talked to each other, even seen each other's work or tweets, and we both thought that the story was nonsense. Rory found some information here on the Shanghai International Energy Exchange, and he found the potential framework for the this gold oil futures contract, and there's a link here. It's yuan denominated, but there's no mention of gold backing or exchangeability on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. So the story is, unless they change it, and I don't see, and I've gone through this, why China would even want to pay in gold. Yeah, they want to pay in gold because gold bugs want them to act as their proxy to crash the dollar. Like somehow that helps them financially. Well, because gold goes up. Okay. China has no interest. When it has a 300% debt to GDP, it's got to keep its people happy. It's got to keep them fed. It's got to keep them employed. There's 200 million people have moved in from the cities to the country. They don't need to upset the apple cart so much that they're going to try to dismantle the petrodollar in one day by launching a gold-backed yuan. Makes no sense whatsoever. Even if it made sense, China hasn't said that they're going to do it. But that's where the gold bugs get you. Aha! But remember, Sun Tzu, they play for the long game, and they're not going to tell you what they're going to do. So basically, any nonsense they make up, they're going to tell you. You can't disprove them because China is so clever. They would never tell you what they're going to do until they do it. Yeah, but they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you through the Asian Nikkei Review story. Oh, so you have inside information. Okay, so China's yuan, anything but stable as Party Congress approaches. The yuan falls 2.8% as Central Planning Committee is set to meet. This is what's going on in China. They're trying to deplace the dollar. They're having their big annual centrally planned communist meeting. And when you centrally plan an economy, it can run away from you. You make mistakes like you build too many ghost cities, or you build too many bridges to nowhere, you borrow too much money, you spend. It could get out of hand. I don't know why anyone thinks that a centrally planned economy can just roll over and crush everything. It's like Japan. Everyone thought they were going to rule the world in the 80s. Look at them. Look at them now. Okay? China's got the same issues. Let's take a break from that for a second. And I did send this to this story here, Rare Silver Treasures from the Viking Age, over to Salivate Metal. But there's not many pictures in it. I want to see follow up on this story. Maybe he can cover this for us. As I mentioned, Salivate Metal, you go over to his site. He puts out a prodigious amount of work. And sometimes he covers these types of finds, silver and gold finds. If I find one about a find, I send it to him, and he's gracious enough to cover it. Now, here you go. See, while the gold bugs are focused on China's long-term plan to crash the dollar and to bring gold back, which is not what they're doing right now, the rest of the world is concerned about, and you don't hear about this in the gold, but you don't have to go far to realize that the rest of the world is petrified what might happen in China after they've just borrowed trillions of dollars to build ghost cities and this internal debt. They're worried what's going to happen. And here, Draghi's confident China monetary policy authorities can cope. He's hoping. Yeah, and that's because China has gold. No, it's not. Draghi's confident. It has nothing to do with gold. He has confidence because that's what central bankers have to say about other centrally planned economies. China's no different. Now, I'm going to show you this one here. Now, Janet Yellen had the audacity to say for years, anytime she was questioned about the labor participation rate going down, she would say, oh, well, that's because baby boomers are retiring, and that's just natural, and we're going to see a bunch of, noise. And it's just nonsense talk. A couple of years ago, in 2015, I actually looked up on the Fed site, the Federal Reserve's own data, and I found that not to be the case. The reason the non-farm payroll, the civilian labor force participation rate was down as a whole, the big number, wasn't because baby boomers were retiring. It was because the people that needed jobs, the people in their prime working ages, 25 to 54, they had experienced a lower labor force participation rate. And she repeated that and repeated that story. Oh, it's only down because the baby boomers are retiring. No, it's because these guys weren't getting jobs, 25 to 54 years old. I went further a couple of years ago, and I used to publish this chart a lot on Smaulgld, and found out that not only were the people 25 to 54 responsible for the lower labor force participation rate, that those 55 and older were actually more involved in the labor force. They were getting more involved since the financial recession. Why? They couldn't retire. The older workers had to stay working. Their participation rates were higher. Now, here's one for you. People 65 and over, they're the ones who experience the greatest increase in participation in the labor force. So Janet Yellen finally said in her yak, wherever she was earlier in the week, that the reason the labor force participation rate was lower was due to baby boomers, was due to those 25 to 54 not getting jobs. That took her 3 years to say that, but she peddled that lie for 3 years that somehow the reason the overall labor force participation rate was down was because baby boomers were retiring. Well, there's some of that, but she failed to acknowledge that the real reason the labor force participation rate was down was because of a drop in the labor force participation rate of people in their prime working years. And she also failed to mention, these are their own, I didn't make this up, these are their numbers, she has access to them, was that baby boomers, unfortunately, older baby boomers, senior citizens, are working more than they were 8, 10 years ago as a percentage. They can't retire, there's no interest, economy's not very good. It's not like even if they have $100,000-$200,000 saved, they just have to eat into principal. It's not like they make any interest. It used to be, I guess you get 8-10%. You might make $8,000, a year in interest. Now you make, $42 at best, I think. I don't know what you get on it. I don't even know what you get. No one keeps money in the bank anymore. No CDs. I think a CD, you're lucky to get 0.5% if you leave it in there for 5 years. So she's finally admitted that, but too late, too late. Motorhead. All right. She also said they were complaining. I saw a couple of places where Fed officials are saying this, that inflation is low, which they think you need more inflation. That's good. And the problem with why we have low inflation is subdued price in healthcare. That's a drag on inflation. I don't know where she gets that. There you go. London gold dealer shark Pixley to accept payment in Bitcoin. Now, the only reason they're doing this will allow customers to pay for gold and other precious metals using digital currency Bitcoin, the company said. They're only doing this because there is a subset of gold bugs that are also crypto bugs. And they have their cryptos and they want to convert them into gold, which could make sense. You sell the one asset high and you buy the other asset low. It's interesting. Peter Schiff, at one point, he came out, he was against cryptocurrencies, has his reasons, it makes sense. Then he sort of changed and said, okay, we'll take cryptos. And now he's just totally against them again. It's probably bad business. I would think that if someone, see, the thing is when you accept cryptos, you don't accept them, you don't hold on to them, you flip them through Coinbase and you get dollars for them. So, really you say, well, that means they're supporting cryptos and they're not on the team. Well, you know what I say to that is, then a gold dealer isn't part of the team either. I'll tell you why. They take fiat currency too. If they really believed in gold, they wouldn't sell it. The other thing that they do, and few people know this, gold and silver dealers, and I don't criticize them for this, when they buy their inventory, let's say they go out and they buy 50 monster boxes, they automatically sell short on the COMEX silver. Why? Because they're not buying the silver and then trying to sell it to you at a higher price. They're just trying to sell it. So they sell on a per unit basis. They need to know that when they sell something, they're going to make money. Because if you buy 50 silver boxes, monster boxes or silver eagles, and the price goes down and they have to sell it to you at the lower price, they just lose money every time they sell the box. But if they have a short position, then they make money on the short and then they just make money on the sale. So they don't make any money on the price of silver going up or down. They make it on how many units they sell. So again, I think it's just good business for Sharps Pixley to sell, to accept Bitcoin. If somebody wants to use their Bitcoin, then why not? Why? I mean, if you believe in free markets, you may not like Bitcoin, but if somebody is using it, more power to them. And if you can get value for it and flip it into to fiat, I don't see the problem with it. Here you go. JP Morgan ordered to pay over $4 billion to widow and family. Okay. JP Morgan calling Bitcoin a fraud, and this is just another example of JP Morgan having to pay for something that looks like it might be fraud. Twitter, new Twitter proposal to increase the character limit from 140 to 280 characters is unnecessary and doesn't make any sense because. There's your argument why you might need 280 characters. Now here's this guy. I don't remember his name. There his name is Norvo Gratz. He says, yeah, Bitcoin's a bubble, but I'm invested in it anyway. Yeah, there is some logic in that. The dot-com bubble lasted 5 years. You got it in 95, 96. Didn't crash till 2000. Same could happen here. I mean, you could see this thing continue to go up. Everyone thinks they're smart calling it a bubble. Well, I think the smarter person is the one who calls it a bubble and then figures out a way to make money off of it. I think even the tulip bubble lasted a few years. All these, a real bubble has legs. There's a reason for it. A lot of people get interested. It's just knowing when to get out. Also, I think, and I should put my money where my mouth is, but I don't have the stomach for it. But if you put money in and then you take it out on the way up and you keep taking, but most people don't do that. I guess that's the danger of a bubble. But I'm sure a guy like this, he'll know how to hedge his position. He'll know how to make money on the way up, and he won't be anywhere near it, or he'll have already made his money by the time whatever he has left in it collapses. But here you go. See, this is the reason that the bubble is probably going to continue to rise. You have these examples of China going against Bitcoin, closing down the exchanges. They may reopen them. Who knows? You've got Japan regulating them now. It's uncertain what's happening in the US. You're going to have places that are legal, places that are illegal, places that are not sure. But there's probably still going to be enough interest in them that'll push these things further because very few people are involved. Very little money on the grand scheme of these. Oh, there's a $150 billion market cap. That's nothing. There's silly stocks that make no money that are listed that have $4 or $5 billion market caps. And this is all the entire crypto space, and half of that is Bitcoin. We'll see. Mario Draghi. Now, here you go. Mario Draghi, European Central Bank. ECB has no power to regulate Bitcoin. Okay. And as we'll see, Christine Lagarde said something on Bitcoin. Some of them appear to be saying, we don't know what to do about this. We're not going to do anything about this, or we're going to legalize it. Or some are saying we're going to clamp down on it. So you're getting these conflicting messages, which has nothing to do with whether you believe the governments are involved in setting it up or not setting it up. There does appear to be, I doubt you can orchestrate this that well, some are in favor and some are against. You get Jamie Dimon saying it's a fraud, and then you get the guy head of Morgan Stanley saying it's okay. And then you get Christine Lagarde making positive comments about it. Ben Bernanke making positive comments. Janet Yellen not saying anything about it. Here's your London gold dealer who accept Bitcoin in payments. Just another story with Sharp's Pixley. I like when they always make these Bitcoins look like there's a coin you can have. There isn't. That's the first silver one I've seen. They're normally gold. Yeah, here's the head of Morgan Stanley. He's saying Bitcoin is more than a fad. Okay, so he's got a different point of view than Jamie Dimon. Now, here's just a point about this gold-backed yuan. That story, the way I read it, it's ingrained in my head. China is expected to, launch a gold-backed yuan. Analysts say game changer. Well, you can start any story like that. It's expected Smaulgld will take over the world. Analysts say it would be a game changer. I print that story, everyone else prints it. Doesn't make it true. If you read it, it doesn't make any sense. Smaulgld is expected to take over the world. Analysts say it would be a game changer. Well, once you accept the first premise, yes, if it's expected that Smaulgld will take over the world, then it follows that would be a game changer. Imagine Smaulgld in charge of the world. Game over, right? Who knows what I would do if I was taking over the world. But the first sentence is unsourced. It is expected that Smaulgld will take over the world. Why don't we figure out what I'm going to do once I take it over? Well, that's a waste of time because this part here, it is expected that Smaulgld will take over the world, hasn't been answered by who expects that. Why do you expect that? Same with the gold-backed yuan story. It is expected. There you go. Here's China has legalized Bitcoin. So is South Korea. Now, South Korea has been clamping down on it, but they're going to regulate it. What's this? China heeds U.S. warning. Oh, yeah, here's something. This is interesting. Again, people have this misunderstanding that somehow, because China has gold, they're calling the shots. And when the United States said that they were going to kick them out of the SWIFT system unless they clamp down on North Korea, what did China do? Did China turn around and flip in the middle finger? No. Beijing orders all North Korean businesses to close. So who's calling the shots there? Not saying it's right or it's wrong. I'm not cheerleading for one over the other. But people in the gold community have this misguided understanding that somehow China, it all has to do with gold. They got gold. They're going to back the yuan with gold. And everyone in China wakes up and it's all about gold. And they're smart and they play 4D chess and they play the long game. No, they play the game and they're not stupid. And they know what they have to do to continue their centrally planned debt-based stimulus Ponzi. And it's not about telling the United States to go pound sand and they're going to stand for delivery for gold that doesn't exist on COMEX and collapse it and then go ahead and back the yuan and tell Saudi Arabia stop taking the dollar and take our gold. It's just ridiculous. Here you go. GoldMoney to sell cryptocurrencies will offer Bitcoin and Ethereum. That, the one thing I'm against in this story is they're not going to sell Litecoin. It's very disappointing. Well, here's Coach Jansen. He and I finally found each other online on this particular gold-backed yuan story, and here he is saying, sometimes I think it would be better to just ignore Twitter and blogs and just read books. Yes. Now, by the way, in this gold-backed story, Coase had pointed out that exchangeable for gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange was nonsense because you can't export gold by law from the Shanghai Gold Exchange, according to his research. Well, they've changed the story. Now, the gold will be sourced from London. Okay, so anything to keep the story alive. So they don't want to say the story is nonsense. They say, no. They can get the gold from London. Okay, so an oil producer, wants gold. They don't have to get paid in yuan and then ask China to go and be their gold broker and get gold from London for them. It doesn't make any sense because, by the way, any oil producer who's now taking any currency, but most likely they're taking dollars, they can go and buy gold. They don't need China to denominate it in yuan, get the money, and then say, hey, China, why don't you go be my broker and go to London and go get me some gold? The whole thing is just stupid. But here's I say, the way they get out of their gold-backed yuan story is this. Hugo Salinas Price has figured out they need to raise the price of gold to $13,000. They won't be able to agree to that. Oh, no, just think that's why it didn't happen. But it's going to happen. Okay. So here's another point. and Coase is saying the same thing. You could take your proceeds from oil sales and you can go and buy gold. Okay. That doesn't make it gold back. So I make the point that oil producers can sell oil, get their dollars, and come to the United States and buy grain. That doesn't make the US dollar grain backed. Alert, new grain backed dollar. Analysts say game changer. I mean, you just think through this stuff. It doesn't make a stitch of sense. Grain backed dollar. How is that different? This will be important. Yeah, here you go. This guy is right. Under Bretton Woods, U.S. paid for imports with printed dollars, which then could be used to buy gold. How is that different from oil, yuan, gold now? It's not. The only difference is, someone asked me, how is it different between Bretton Woods and this? And I said, well, the difference is Bretton Woods was an agreement from 44 different countries. They announced it, and it said exactly how it's going to work. This thing is just a made-up story. But he's right here that people can get their yuan from selling oil to China and then go buy gold. That doesn't make it a gold-backed yuan. Yeah. For all you people who say China plays the long game, look at this. All you got to do is go on Google or YouTube or anywhere you want, whatever search engine you use, and type in Chinese ghost cities. This is not the long game. This is Keynesian communist centrally planned stimulus. You have no interest in the long term when you do this. All these buildings here are empty. There's like 50 of these cities in China. What do? This is stimulus. Long term, do they have a plan for these cities? There's not enough people in the world to live in them. So when I hear people, oh, Xing Zhu, and you got to read this, and you don't understand how the Chinese think, it's like, no, I understand how people and Chinese to a certain extent think, but I know that this right here isn't thinking long term. This isn't 4D chess. This is absolute insanity. This is what you do to generate GDP. This is what you do to give people jobs. This is what you do to try to keep people employed. This is what you do when you're scamming as a government and you're getting kickbacks and bribes. This is not economics. This is a disaster. And if you think this is sustainable, I, I don't know. Oh, they have gold. Gold doesn't prevent you from this kind of stupidity. All right, here we go. China catalyst to send gold over 10,000. So here's another story. I think this one is it's on Zero Hedge, but it comes from Gold Core. Everyone's believing this story like it's going to happen. They just got to work out the details. They just got to figure out what the price of gold is going to be. And next thing you know, gold backed yuan. Again, no one questioned the source of it. It's just out there. Japan issues crypto exchange licenses. So there you go. Japan is fully legal. Now you have to ask yourself, Japan is more under the control of the United States than China is for sure, right? Japan is a defeated state. Well, if they've approved of it, you don't think that the U.S. and Japanese regulators have any type of coordination that this would be allowed to happen unless somehow the United States at least knew about it? And so we'll see what happens there. Now, the latest story is what's going in Catalonia. And yeah, I woke up this morning and I see a lot of these scenes of police punching Catalonians and shutting down ballot boxes and just general chaotic scenes. And what's happening there is there's a referendum. I think Catalonia, the capital of which is Barcelona, it's up in the north east part of Spain. Very nice area. It's where the 1992 Olympics were. They had a thing called the Ramblas, this Gaudi architecture. It's a nice part of Spain. But they want to be not Spain, they want to be Catalonia, and they're like 20% of the GDP of Spain. They got a good lot amount of tax revenue. And obviously Madrid doesn't want them to leave. Madrid is the capital of Spain. Now Spain is part of the EU. Catalonia wants to be part of the EU. They just don't want to be part of Spain. And that's where the problem is. Because Spain is saying if they leave, we don't want them in the EU. So I don't know how this whole thing gets resolved. It's very strange that Catalonia would want independence from Spain, but not from the EU. And then Mexico is saying, I'm not Mexico, Spain is saying if Catalonia leaves, we don't want them allowed in. Now, I don't know how all that works out. So that should provide for a lot of political posturing. It's probably not good for the euro. So there you go again. The two dominant currencies in the world are the euro and the dollar. And the dollar is in terms of reserves held by foreign central banks is about 65%. Euro is only about 20%. So, and the Chinese yuan is less than 1%. But again, this is how the dollar moves up a bit because now there's problems in the euro. There's problems everywhere. All right, what else do we have? Mario Draghi, he's still talking about more QE. We need a very substantial degree of accommodation needed. They bought 1.765 billion in corporate bonds last week. They have 109. It's just unbelievable. They've bought 119 billion dollars. These are corporate bonds. These aren't like other central banks' debt. This is just like regular companies. The ECB bids on their bonds and causes them to go higher and yields lower. Fed chatter, Dudley, risk of recession over the near term is pretty low. That's pretty amazing that somehow the central banks have managed to, at least the way they calculate a recession, avoid a recession for 9 years. And now they're saying, yeah, we can continue like this. Sure, if you keep printing money, or if you're like China. See, the central banks in the West have managed to eke out, depending on how you calculate it, 1-2% growth. China manages to get the 8-9% growth by doing this. Imagine if you saw this in U.S. cities, you would think your government had gone mad. So you live in Boston, you live in New York, you live in San Francisco, you live in Chicago, Miami, Detroit, wherever you live. And you drive 20 miles outside your city, and there's another Detroit, there's another Chicago, and there's another San Francisco. And you say, where'd this come from? And no one lives in it. Oh, Trump built it. Why? He wants to get the GDP up. Out of your mind? This is what's happening, and people are calling this the Chinese miracle. This is not a miracle. This is insanity to build this. Now, by the way, if you do your search, I didn't do it. I didn't include the links here, but China has um, ghost cities that look like Paris. They have ghost cities that look like London. That look like Venice. They're like theme parks, but they're not even charging admission, and no one lives there. But they got gold, I'll tell you. It was China. They got gold. They're going to take over the world with that gold. Yeah, gold back yuan. Yeah, and by the way, how much oil are they going to need when they stop doing this? They're not going to need as much energy because maybe what they're going to do in the Henry Hazlitt, they're going to knock these things down and then build them up again. Maybe that's what they're going to do. I don't know. It's just astounding to me that people listen to this gold back yuan story as if that's all China's got to worry about is backing yuan with gold so that people in the United States who have a few ounces of gold, the price will go higher. Well, here we go. U.S. Mint. I mean, these are horrific numbers. I mean, so far, it was a decent amount of Silver Eagle sold at the end of the month, but there's still 320,000. That's it. No more. 320,000 sold in September. 8,000 1 ounce American gold eagles. That is statistically no gold eagles sold. You got a population of 320 million. They're also sold overseas, and 8,000 ounces are sold. It's nothing. There's where you can buy them: BGSC, Golden Eagle Coins, SD Bullion, Money, Metals, Exchange. All right, what else do we got? We talked earlier the week as U.S. headed for war with Venezuela. Not going to cover that, but that is a YouTube. You can click on the video. You can see it. Now, I did a new Ask Smaulgld series. I had on first guest, Hosea Greenfield. We talked about how long could this basically artificial economy go on. And we discussed how the U.S. and China are addicted to debt-based stimulus to keep their economies going. And I'm saying China's far more debt-based and far more addicted to that stimulus to keep its economy going. If China decided, oh, we're going to raise interest rates, we're going to let the yuan rise, we want the yuan to go higher, and we're going to start slowing down the stimulus, the entire economy would collapse in a minute. They have no interest in doing that. They are trying to travel at 1,000 miles an hour, and they don't have room for error. So they're certainly not going to throw a monkey wrench into the economic system and say, for the benefit of the gold bugs, we're going to change the price of gold to $13,000. We're going to let them get gold, and we're going to be their broker. They got other things to do. That's all. They can't even calculate what the impact would be. But it's going to make the gold price go higher, so I guess it's got to be true, and I'm for it. So the other thing we did was I hadn't done a Smaulgld subscriber sound off series in a while. I did one with Rory Hall, but before that one I hadn't done one for a couple of months. We're going to start doing them again. I think I've had 15, 16, 17 guests. They're all invited back, so we're new guests, but I'll now start doing repeat guests, people coming back for the second time after 3 or 4 months. But Josh Wiley was on, and we talked about the BRICS. Again, the myth that somehow the BRICS are there antagonizing the dollar. They're really, at least according to Josh, and I subscribe to this as well, they really are two sides of the same coin. They're globalist tools. It's all part of globalism. You have to have as many wars in the water as possible. So, they put them up as like somehow they're out there to smash the dollar. They're not. All the players are the same. Remember the term BRICS. Who invented the term BRICS? Goldman Sachs. That's all you need to know. All right. And the last thing we need to talk about is Christine Lagarde. I did a long video on this one. Not long, but I actually went through her speech. I listened to what she said. I compared it to the transcript of her speech. She did go off text a couple of times. I've provided a link, or there's a link right there, to the differences in what she said. And the two main things that were interesting was she actually said that cryptocurrencies were good in the way and people in a free market would opt for them. She said at least over some of these lesser currencies with lesser, proper monetary policy, or even just over paper currencies because you could make transactions quickly, you can be cross-border, it doesn't cost much money, you don't have to get clearances, and in that sense, she thought they were good. And that maybe if people wanted that, they would beg the central banks to create their own. Now, I'm not sure if that's right, but of course she's a central banker. She has to say that, hey, if they can do it, we can do it, but we can't. But to her credit, she said we just can't ignore them and hope they'll go away. She said they're currently not an issue because they can be hacked, they're unstable, meaning the price goes up and down. She's right about all that. But the interesting I found that what she said was at the very end when she went off script, and no one's picked up on this, but then Smaulgld has its small audience, and people don't necessarily retweet or repeat Smaulgld that much, and that's why I haven't seen this elsewhere. Here's what she said. She said at the end, I could have talked to you about cybersecurity. She's talking about what she could have done was given a talk about why cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin are bad. She could have talked to you about cybersecurity, the challenges of hacking, the financing of terrorism, all the basic things you can talk about being why you're against Bitcoin, financing of terrorism, the hiding places, tax avoidance that are made available. And she says, I believe we as individuals and communities have the capacity to shape technological and economic futures that work. Okay. So she didn't trash Bitcoin, but then she added at the end, and this was not part of the speech. She said, I'd like to pause for a second here. We go around beating our chests, reminding ourselves when globalization was on the up and rising, and it was the story of the day. We forgot about the fact that it has to benefit all. So basically, she's saying we love globalism. Globalism is great. We're doing it for our benefit. Oh, but we better keep in mind that other people have to benefit, not just us. Let's not make the same mistake again, she says. If we don't do that, we might be very sorry in 2015, if it goes that far, that we have not reminded ourselves of this imperative. So, very interesting remarks from Miss Lagarde. You can see them on BitChute, on YouTube, on the Smaulgld site, and on VidMe. That video is there, and it is called, what is it called? I'll tell you in a second what it's called. Oh, it's up at the top. IMF head Lagarde touts cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Well, thank you very much for listening. I know it was long. Appreciate all those who stayed to the end, and we'll talk to you next week.